Election day here in the US, and we are talking not election, but we are talking about the best items in American presidential history. I'm Darren Rovell with Collect, and joining me is Collect's Will Stern and Ben Burrows. You guys know that I love Kennedy, and Kennedy in general just has this aura and this longevity because of obviously the mystery around his death, and there's always talk about it. I was the underbidder on the Kennedy limo keys in 2013, which sold for $32,000. As I told Will earlier, I did not have the money to win those, but it was really the first time, and I'm sure we've all had these experiences where we've agreed to spend more money than we really have. And luckily, I did not win those because I probably would have just sold them right away. Um, but with Kennedy, obviously, you have the pieces of the limo and the blood stains and other things. But Kennedy and Lincoln seem to hold the day here because of the mysteries in their assassination. Will, do you think that's really the two that people kind of go after and have the most mystique and value?
Yeah, I mean, taking away documents and autographs, it seems like memorabilia from those two are definitely the most coveted and the ones that sell for the most. And I think it's largely pertaining to both of their assassinations, right? You mentioned the keys from the limo. Heritage sold the license plates from Kennedy's limo for about 100 grand in 2015. And everything from the binoculars that Lincoln had at Ford's Theater the night of his assassination to bandages from his death have sold for, tens of thousands of dollars and six figures and up.
Before I get to Ben, I do want to talk about the mystery of the tickets from Ford's Theater.
Mhm.
Um, that was bought by Jim Irsay recently for what was it, Will, around $260,000 a pair of
Yeah.
tickets from that night, supposedly.
Hmm.
There's a little bit of mystique and I would say questionability on terms of the provenance of it, how perfect it is. The modern day person wants PSA to slab it, and PSA wouldn't slab it in general because they're just not slabbing tickets that have the date stamps because they think that obviously that could be corrupted with. So that one is interesting, and I was an early bidder on that, but then at like 265,000, or it just kind of gets away from you. Ben, do you have a particular either president or a particular item that you fancy?
Yeah, so Will actually wrote about it today in his article that released earlier. I know that everybody's excited about tickets and things that have to do with Lincoln and Kennedy and things like that. Come on, guys. There's the Barack Obama 49th birthday basketball signed by Kobe, LeBron, Magic Johnson, and then one of the greatest basketball players of all time from Syracuse, my alma mater, from that sold, I think, for like $99,000. I know that there's a preference for very presidential things. That's not exactly a presidential thing, but Obama was has so often been associated with basketball. He's even got a tops card that gets very popular, has an image variation that gets very expensive. I think that's sort of a little Easter egg that might not be presidential in the way that people initially expect it to be, but it's a great item. I
I
love it.
think of you as more of a modern guy for us because of your coverage of cards. So that's a good play by you. The Punahou High School jersey of Obama's that sold, that was at the time, Will, a humongous jersey sale for what that was priced at. So that's certainly out there. As journalism guys, obviously, Dewey defeats Truman. That one I have, surprisingly, I don't have. I've bid on several times. What's so amazing about that is, they rushed it out so quickly that there's a couple paragraphs that are typeset backwards, which is hilarious. I believe the story about that was that at the time the newspaper was on strike, so they didn't have full-time people there. But that's an amazing one. I think there's a couple hundred that are still out there. What is it? The Chicago Herald Tribune? Is that the
It's a Chicago Daily Tribune.
Daily Tribune, right? And as far as price goes on that, they hover depending on condition in between 2,000 and 4,000. I don't think it's really risen, but I always think that's a piece that like if we had in the collect office, I think people would like stop and like it's arresting, right? Because it's so funny with all the precincts reporting and everything that we have today about how you could get it wrong.
Well, one of my favorite things is one of the actual newspapers. Somebody had the wherewithal to have both Truman and Dewey sign it. And Truman inscribed it. Truman hasn't found it out. And that's sold at RR for 16,000 and change.
Which I thought was low. What a great
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah. And I can't imagine being Thomas Dewey and signing that.
Yeah, and as far as presidents go, you've really seen a lot from the autograph standpoint in the last 5 years of interest there. What's interesting is that obviously presidents in general have signed more than, say, a Paul Revere, who's not even a dignitary, or any of these guys who we always talk about who have signed the Declaration and then died or something like that. But it's been interesting to see what has risen in value. Like Abraham Lincoln has kind of stayed steady. And I think it's because he signed so much, especially signing every single document when a Union soldier was discharged, right? He would sign it, they'd put it in their backpack. And so there's a ton of Lincolns, but really on the high end to see, especially Washington to me, since I followed that market. A great Washington 5 years ago was $8,000, and now it's clearly $25,000. And I think as we get to the 250th anniversary of America in 2026, I think there's going to be more of a focus on this.
I think one of the coolest things about presidential autographs is the rarest autograph from a president during their term, and the most valuable is William Henry Harrison, who was only president for about a month. He died after getting, I believe, pneumonia from his long inauguration speech in the cold. And so that goes for 75,000 plus.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's by far the rarest. It's like, you can't find it.
But you have to get it during so it has to be dated.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, that's a
So
tough thing.
it's a document signed during it. If it's he had various positions prior to being president, and stuff like that from prior years is in the single digits, thousands.
Ben, what do you think about the autographs and the cuts? Obviously, this is your specialty. Over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, as Allen and Ginter and some of these oddball sets, they include a president. And for what it's worth, I mean, it seems to get more attention than normal because it's in a pack. They make it one of one, and it sells for much more than a regular cut. So why do you think it's just so oddball that people aren't expecting it, or what do you think the talk about these presidential cuts that you get within packs has been? Why has it been so crazy over the past 5 years?
Well, I think that there's a couple factors at play. I think among the card collectors, one of the factors is that it's sort of just this sidestep, especially with products like Allen and Ginter. It's something, even though it's a product where it's known for oddball inclusions, people just don't expect it. You go in and you think that you're going to get a cut from Ty Cobb or Willie Mays or Hank Aaron, and then all of a sudden it's Kennedy.
Yeah, the shock value, the Kennedy that was
Right.
just pulled. I mean,
Exactly.
the amount of talk over it is just so like seem to me strange. But the fact that it's pack pulled also becomes part of the lore for someone who wants to buy it.
Exactly. And then again, this is the thing specifically among card collectors that doesn't necessarily apply to the rest of the hobby. There is such a premium put on autographs that are pack pulled. For whatever reason, there's only a very small portion of card collectors that prefer the in-person card on card autographs that are actually collected by that person. And there's a massive premium on the pack pulled items. For whatever reason, I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's the reality of the hobby at the time. And something that I also think is interesting is the quality of not just the cut that it's of the cut itself, but how it's placed within the card. We've seen so many of these,
What are they doing?
and it is very difficult to understand how, from a design perspective, the cuts are misaligned within the card itself, or the
Or
quality of
cut
the
or cut. It's just put the cut in and then design the card.
exactly. It seems like a very simple solution, but for whatever reason, multiple manufacturers have not been able to execute on it. So unfortunately, there's also the reality that even if you get this incredible cut signature from a former president, there's a very strong chance that it's not going to display well. And so I think that adds an even higher premium to the ones that do display well.
All right, we'll obviously be following the Kamala Trump merchandise memorabilia market, depending on who wins or loses, if we know that in the next week. But Ben, Will, thanks so much for joining. I'm Darren Rovell, and thanks for watching Collect TV.